wanted to see what would grow and what wouldn't grow. We're at about 2,900 feet. It was actually a greater revelation.
Somehow I think our Father has a purpose in all of this. One of his purposes is to keep us in the Word.
But what we're trying to show people is that they can actually do this. And I know they can because we're doing it. Okay, before we start, let's have prayer. Father in heaven, we come before you again at this appointed time of yours, and we pray, Father, for your blessing. We recognize our great need, and we understand that that's what qualifies us for your blessings, and we claim your blessings now because we need them. Pray that you open your word to us, give us understanding, we pray in Yeshua's name. Amen. Third temple. The only thing that's holding up a third temple right now is what?
The Dome of the Rock.
Dome of the Rock, and there's a mosque. The mosque, I forget what the name of it is, but there's a little mosque up there. The Dome of the Rock sort of takes center stage, but there is a mosque up there. Somebody remember the name of the mosque? It's not really important, but it's up there. Jews are not allowed to pray on that Temple Mount. The Temple Mount that they believe is where their temple needs to be. They're not even allowed to pray by Arab law on the temple. So without Islam on the world stage, guess who's going to build a temple? Israel will build its temple. While the world is struggling to survive, the whole world will be struggling to survive, but the answer to the problem is God. You see, this is a cause to effect thing. So the one world order is pointing to a one world religion, which the little horn will dominate in. But guess what guess what Zionists will be focused on? Building a house for all nations to come. You see, this is the prophecy that they're going to attempt to fulfill. It says in Daniel 11:14, and this verse I struggled with for a long time until I think it may have come to light. Now in those times, speaking of the future, now in those times many shall arise up against the king of the south. Also violent men of whose people? Your people. Whose people would that be? That'd be Daniel's people. Violent men of your people, Daniel, shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision. I have to ask, what vision? Yeah. What vision? Anybody got any answers? What are the Zionists trying to do? Right. Now, why would the Zionists build a temple in Jerusalem and start sacrificing again? Why would they do that?
For the coming of the Messiah.
Daniel tells us. In fulfillment of the vision. But these are good people. It says also violent men of your people, Daniel, will exalt themselves, lift themselves up in fulfillment of the vision. I propose to you that it is not according to God's plan, at least according to the prophecies, that they build a temple and start sacrificing again. That's what this prophecy is saying. You read it. That's what it's saying. The vision that the Zionists want to fulfill is they want to see all nations come into Jerusalem, and that's what the prophecies indicate. Now they had their go at it, and we read some prophecies this morning that indicated that your house is left unto you desolate. We can read in Daniel in chapter 9 where the Jews had 490 years extended their probation until the Messiah came, and the conditions are in the prophecy that they were bringing everlasting righteousness to anoint the most holy and so on, and bring an end to sacrifice and oblation. That's the fulfillment of the Messiah's purpose in his coming. Did they accept God's plan for them? No, they didn't. No, they didn't. But they still think God has a plan for them, even though they've rejected it. So they want to go back to what they were doing back then when their house was left desolate. And they want to start all over again. Now my question is, are they doing a rerun of what they were doing? Or are they actually accepting the Messiah when they build the temple? Are they actually accepting God's plan? Have they rejected the Son of God still? Are they rejecting the Son of God still? Because if he said your house is left under you desolate because you have not accepted me, then it won't be until they accepted him that he will accept them. And the reasons why he came in and allowed the Romans, if we read carefully in Deuteronomy, it says that if you do this, I will do that, and I will not allow your enemies to come in. For whatever reason, he allowed the enemies to come in, and Yeshua in red letters is very clear on why it happened. He sent them prophets, and more prophets, and more prophets. Then what could he do? What more could he do? He sent his son. Surely they will accept his son. No, they rejected his son. Then he sent the promise of the Father and the gift of the Holy Spirit. And 3,000 received him out of how many? Hundreds of thousands of people. That's rejection. And so Yeshua said that he will take the kingdom of God from you and give it to a nation that will produce its fruit. Now the question is, somebody says this is replacement. No, it's not replacement theology. The promise is to the house of Israel. The question is, who's the house of Israel? It's those that have accepted Yeshua. It says if you're Christ, you're Abraham's seed and heirs to all the promises given to the house of Israel. That's what it says. Paul goes through the whole thing in Ephesians as well. God's original plan was to have people live forever. Was his original plan to have sin on this planet? No. That was man's choice. And all along they've made choices that have thwarted God's plan. So he creates a people out of Abraham. So I find it very interesting that from our father Adam, there's 2,000 years to Abraham. From Abraham to Messiah, there's 2,000 years. From Messiah to today, there's 2,000 years. The sanctuary is very interesting because it's 2/3, 1/3. It's 2/3 holy place, 1/3 most holy place. When Messiah left, he's been in the most holy place for 2,000 years. This plan is a little more involved, and what he said was stay in Jerusalem, but then I want you to go to the ends of the earth. That was the idea, because his people rejected. The disciples, which were Jewish, except for one, all went to the ends of the earth to bring in all those that would accept. And it's been 2,000 years. So God gave the plan of salvation to Adam and his posterity until Abraham for 2,000 years. So that's basically, it was to the Gentile world. Did they accept? No, they didn't accept. Then he chose Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees. And Abraham is the who? So that was the beginning. God began again at Abraham. Another 2,000 years. So when Yeshua was talking to the Pharisees, they said they claimed Abraham as their father. He said, no, your father's not Abraham. Your father is the devil. These are pretty strong words from the Messiah. He said their father was the devil. So they had cut themselves off. It says 490 years are determined for your people to make all these conditions met. And they failed miserably, and that's why the gospel went to the whole world. Through the disciples which were obedient to the covenant. See, the gospel is really only for those, the good news of the gospel is only for those that are obedient. And we know that. So it's not replacing anything here. It's who's the house of Israel is really the question. Is the house of Israel a bloodline?
No.
Or is it a spiritual house that he's building? A spiritual house out of those that have accepted Messiah and so on. And that's So at the end of time, God says that there's going to be a people of the bloodline of Israel that are going to be wicked, I'm paraphrasing. And they're going to see fit that they're going to try and fulfill these visions. Zechariah, Isaiah, Jeremiah. But Yeshua says, hey, you want to focus on Daniel. And then he says, I'll give you some more information. The revelation of Yeshua the Messiah that he gave unto his servant, unto his angel, and then he gave it to his servant John. So Yeshua's admonition for us is both Daniel and Revelation. Those are his words, not mine. Those are his words. So I'm trying to tell people is to focus on these books. And if you can't fit your ideas of what you think into Daniel and Revelation, you better rethink, because Yeshua was pointing to something different than what a lot of people are focused on. So I believe Daniel 11:14 is warning us that the Jews have something in mind, and they're the Zionists, and they are going to see fit that they are going to fulfill the visions that they were given for the house of Israel. No joke, many religious Zionists strive to rebuild Jerusalem's temple. Quote, what is strange and worrying about this phenomenon is not just the fact that these people who see themselves as carrying the banner and the renewal of Judaism in our times think in totally idolatrous terms. You want to listen to some of the stuff that they're saying. After all, the temple they are longing for embodies all that is linked with our consciousness to shocking and vicious brutality, such as golden altars, bellowing calves, being slaughtered in the name of God, and rivers of blood filling the halls. Now the question is, with this, one would have to ask, isn't it God's plan that they do this? That's a question that we're all, do you know what? Everyone in this room, if they live to see this day, you're going to have to answer that question. Now, I've talked to a lot, well, I'm not sure whether it'll be God's plan or not. Well, one day you're going to have to make a choice. You will have to make a choice. So I would suggest that you study with all your heart, because I'm convinced that this is going to be a dividing line. This will be a dividing line. And this is going to bring people into trouble. Whichever way they go, it will bring them into serious trouble. Okay, so let's move on here. The fact that they dare to believe that this is Judaism and these are God's commandments is no less worrying. After turning Zionism into a movement of heartless thieves, now I'm just using the words, these are the words of Yeshua. You have made your father's house a... This is not exaggerating right here. There's nothing that has changed since then. After turning Zion into a movement of heartless thieves and no conscience for the past 40 years, they now want to impose dangerous nonsense on the spirit of Judaism of our times, of the type that led to the destruction of whose people? This is written by a Jew. That's what shocked me. You see, a great majority of Judaism is totally against Zionism. Did you know that? They're totally against it. They understand that they were dispersed to the nations. You see, the problem with Iran is not that they hate the Jews. They hate Zionism. Now, you want to do some reading about Zionism. You really want to read some stuff about Zionism. And that'll help you understand what I'm saying. The Zionists have deceived many well-meaning Jewish people via terror, trickery, and false propaganda. They have at their disposal the use of nearly universally subservient media. Whoever attempts to criticize them puts his livelihood and at times his very life in danger. This is now speaking of people in Israel. This is speaking of people in the world. And you might, where are they using the propaganda? The propaganda, what I'm saying right now, I would be severely criticized in many messianic circles for what I'm saying right now. Severely criticized. I would be severely criticized in many Christian circles Because they're actually seeing Zionism as the answer to the world's problems. They are. And so this is what I mean. We're looking at a dividing line, and we're all going to have to take one step on one side or the other. The third temple starts operation. According to prophecy now, I'm just quoting prophecy, animal sacrifices will resume again. You can see this in Daniel 8, 13 to 14, Daniel 8, 23, 25, Daniel 11, 14, which is what we just read. People of your people will rise up to fulfill the vision. Daniel 11, 30, 31, and also Revelation 11, 1 to 3, and that's the measure of the court, which is outside the temple. It has been given to the Gentiles. That's what that's talking about, talking of the sacrificial system that will be reinstated in Revelation 11, 1 to 3. Meanwhile, the 4 remaining permanent members of the UN Security Council, that be Great Britain, France, which will encompass the EU. France now is one of the members, but the EU, I believe, will take that spot, because in Daniel chapter 7 it says that this fourth kingdom, the EU, will be a multitude of nations, or 10 nations, and the little horn will come out of that nation. So we've sort of narrowed that down to being the EU, which France, of course, is one of the major players. France and Germany are the most powerful of those nations in the EU, besides Great Britain, which we're going to see will be pulled out. And they will have to stand on their own 2 feet without the eagle. Okay, Russia and China, of course, will be on the world stage as well. So these will be striving for world supremacy. As I said yesterday, nature hates a vacuum. So because the United States is taking away, one of these nations will seek to become number one. And this is what Daniel saw in Daniel 10 verses 1 through 3. Daniel said he saw a great conflict, and it was these nations battling. That's what we're referring to in Daniel 11. People would be clamoring for peace, and the little horn, which I believe to be the papacy, fits all the description and the details that are revealed in the prophecies, will propose a solution for world peace. And what better place for him to reign than the city of peace, Jerusalem? It just makes good common sense that if the papacy is going to be the official voice of the one world religion, it would make no better sense than them to reign from Jerusalem. They've had their eyes on that. I mean, you can internet that all you want, and you'll come up with that. They believe that they would like to control Jerusalem. Why do we believe the little horn is the papacy? Daniel 7:25 says that he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, tend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, times and a half. He speaks, these are what he does, he speaks pompous words, which that really doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Another place it says he speaks great things, also known as blasphemy. These great things he's speaking is blasphemy. In other places he's speaking blasphemy. Persecutes the saints of the Most High for 3.5 years. This is why we're trying to help people understand. Like, a lot of people put this in prophecy in past history, 3.5 years, and there's ways you can get to 3.5 years in history if you turn it into days equals years and so on, and you do some of these gymnastics, which has been done in the past, but it actually says years. So at the end of time, we can see a 3.5 year period, which if you put all these prophecies in the past, if it was just a short time, if the little horn was just going to come back for a few short months, how much preparation would you have to make? Very little, right? Would that be fair enough? Yeah. Maybe your groceries in your house would last. So I believe the enemy of souls has blinded our minds to the fact that it's not just going to be a few months, it's going to be a few years. Now, is what is in your fridge going to last you for a few years? No, it isn't. So that means you're going to have to be in a position to be somewhere where you can grow your own food so that you don't accept what the little horn is going to do, which is, help me out, which is To enforce
The mark of the beast.
the mark of the beast. You can't buy or sell unless you receive the mark. And the mark is coming under their control, worshiping according to their ways, and so on. So we need to be in a position where we're separate and we're not dependent on the system. Now I'm going to take you back to a little story. When the Israelites were told that they were going to go back, when Daniel was praying in Daniel chapter 9, the end of the 70 years that Jeremiah prophesied had been fulfilled. Daniel was praying, Father, let's take us back. It's time to go back. And so at the end of the 7 years, what happened? Cyrus made a decree that they could go back, and he gave them all they needed. There was 3 or 4 decrees that went out that the Jews could go back. Now, what did the Jews do?
Most of them didn't go back.
Most of them didn't go back. Why?
They were comfortable
In where?
in Babylon.
Oh my goodness.
So are we.
And so what happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a death decree. Now that's a lesson for us. At the end of time, those that are comfortable in Babylon are going to find themselves in a lot of trouble. Now, I don't know if we want to wait and find out whether they're delivered at that time. Yeshua seems to give us a lot of admonition to get ready for this. The lesson is, I think, when God calls us out of Babylon, we should leave. Right? Pray that your flight be not.
In the winter or the summer.
Right. So everyone's taking a flight at some point. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till the last minute. Think to change times and laws. The third one is think to change times and laws. Let's look at each of these 3 characteristics a little closer. Pompous words or blasphemy. Matthew 9, 3-6. Claiming the power and authority to forgive sins. That's blasphemy. They can't do that. So the power that is going to commit blasphemy, this little horn power, is claiming the power to forgive sins. That's Bible definition of blasphemy. So does the Roman Catholic Church, somebody tell me, does the Roman Catholic Church claim the power to forgive sins? I used to go to confessional every week. And I used to lie every week about what I did every week because what I actually did was so bad that I couldn't tell the priest. And he forgave my sins if I said 7 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers. Has anyone ever been there?
Yeah.
Yeah. They do claim the power to forgive sins. Yes, they do. And how ridiculous does that sound to anyone that has never done that? Yeah, that's craziness. That's craziness. Bible definition, anyone that claims the power to forgive sin is taking the place of God. That's Bible definition. So it says that the little horn will commit blasphemy. So that's one way they're doing it. By blasphemy definition in Matthew 12, according to Yeshua, it's attributing the work of God to Satan. Or attributing the work of Satan to God. It's either way you do it, it's blasphemy. Now, the little horn thinks to change times and laws. And the interesting part in that, if you look at their writings or talk to a Catholic, they will tell you that Yeshua changed the times and laws when he died. Have you ever heard that? All that was changed when he died. Not the Yeshua that I came to know. He changed nothing when he died. He brought forgiveness of sin. He didn't clean pigs when he died. It doesn't mean that I can eat pork just because he died. He didn't change the law just because he died. That wasn't his purpose. He didn't change the Sabbath at his death. He didn't annihilate the feasts at his death. See, the Catholic Church and most of Christendom who follows in its footsteps, although they won't admit it, but they follow in its footsteps by saying and declaring that when Yeshua died, the law was nailed to the cross. That's blasphemy. That's attributing the work of Satan to God. By Bible definition, that is blasphemy. And that's what they've done. And most of Christendom follows that. They follow in the footsteps of Rome, even though they call themselves Protestants. They've lost the whole concept. What a protesting Catholic became a Protestant when they separated themselves from the Catholic Church. But by echoing the same doctrine, they really haven't separated, or they haven't moved forward in truth, which is what we're trying to do, right? The Catholic Church claims that they have the authority to forgive sins by going to confession, which I know about. I'm a witness to that. They also claim that they sit in the seat of God on earth and they have a power and authority to make laws that are binding on the church. They claim that. It's in their books. That's blasphemy. They can't do that. They can change and alter God's law. Persecution of the saints, have they done this? The Inquisition was a powerful office set up within the Catholic Church. It was only in one country. Church to root out and punish heresy throughout Europe and the Americas, beginning with the 12th century and continuing for hundreds of years. The Inquisition is infamous for the severity of its tortures and its persecutions of the Jews and Muslims. Its worst manifestation was in Spain, where the Spanish Inquisition was a dominant force for more than 200 years, resulting in some 32,000 executions. That's executions. That's not mentioning what else. Excommunications and so on. So this is, I propose that if the Catholic Church got its power back, if they were given its power back, they would turn into the same persecuting power that they always have been. The only reason why we're not seeing it today is because they have not got the power and authority. They will be given all power and authority, and they will begin their persecution again. Little Horn's activity, blasphemy, tells us he will think to change times and laws, as we've already covered. Talking to somebody the other day, and they said, you know, I saw a presentation and you had some of these modern translations on it that says that actually it doesn't say, like in the King James it says think to change times and laws, and some people think that's just the Sabbath. But when you look in different translations, you can see it clearly. It's not just the Sabbath. And we look at the word in Aramaic, because Daniel 7 was written in Aramaic. There's where part of the problem is it's not the word moed. Doesn't think to change times, which is moed in Hebrew, but it's in Aramaic. It's a different word. So when you look in the word Aramaic, which is a different language, of course, and then translate it to the Hebrew, it is moed. And some of these new translations are bringing that out. And that's why we're here, because we're seeing this. People are presenting these ideas that we need to read a little closer. This Aramaic word for festivals is moedim in the Hebrew. So now we're starting to see that the little horn will change these things. The Catholic Church proudly admits that they are the ones who changed the Sabbath to Sunday. I'm thinking, and I'm looking at you. The Catholic Church, which goes back how far? When were the beginnings of the Catholic Church?
321.
Yeah, if we were to go back to the beginnings and try and figure out when the Catholic Church really got its foothold, started to do stuff. Okay, yeah, we're going back to the few hundreds AD, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The Catholic Church, in their history, are saying that they changed the Sabbath. What day are they saying they changed?
The Sabbath.
Which day of the week is that?
Sunday.
Right. The Catholic Church claims that they changed the seventh day of the week to the first day of the week. Now, I hope you're getting why I'm making an emphasis on this. Because there are some out there that say that we should be worshiping on Tuesday this month, and Wednesday next month, and Thursday next month. Are you with me?
Right.
Right. But those that have kept a good log of history and have all the books in their vault are saying that the Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. And their authority shows that. They were able to change the seventh day of the week, the day of worship that God set up, they were able to change it to Sunday. Are you following me? So people that are teaching that the Sabbath is on any other day than the seventh day of the week really aren't reading the history right. Because the Catholic Church is claiming its authority because they were able to change the day of worship that God gave to the first day of the week. And their history goes back a long ways. You see, I don't believe there was any change in the Sabbath from the disciples to the Catholic Church. And they changed it from Saturday to Sunday.
Well, I read an article that said that the Catholic Church had all power, otherwise they would not have been able to change the Sabbath.
Right. So, here's my case. If they were actually keeping a lunar Sabbath, it would be in the history books. It would be in the Catholic history books. It would be changing the lunar Sabbath to Sunday. That's my point.
Who was keeping it?
If the disciples were keeping a lunar Sabbath, that would have been kept up until the Catholic Church. There was no change until the Catholic Church. I don't believe history records any change. So my point being is whatever the Catholic Church changed, it's what the disciples were doing. And so if they changed from Saturday to Sunday, Saturday is what the disciples were doing. Nowhere in their history books does it say, we changed the lunar Sabbath to Sunday. It's not there. That needs to be reckoned with for anyone that's worshiping on a different day than Sabbath, as far as I'm concerned, on Sunday. Anyways, just a point I wanted to bring out because I know we're going to face all this because the little horn now, he's got other people singing his tune. And you know, the way Satan works is very clever, very clever. We don't want to underestimate the mindset of this guy that we're dealing with. Is he's allowed you now to keep the feasts, right? He's got to give you that because you've seen that in the Bible. He's got to give you the worship of the Sabbath. So he gives in. Now his question is, are you sure you got the Sabbath on the right day? Are you sure you got the feast on the right day? So he gets more clever as we go on. He starts to, put doubt. That's his game, is doubt. Okay, I got to give him the Sabbath now, but let's get him confused on what day the Sabbath is. It's just, you can see how he works. That's why when Yeshua says, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me, they will not follow another. We've got to get to know the voice of the shepherd. That's why I keep telling people, start reading those letters in the New Testament. Yeshua unpacked tons of stuff in there that is appropriate and applicable to our day. The disciples asked, what is the sign of your coming? Let's start focusing on what he said. And really, because he unpacked this thing for us. Man and God, and the Sabbath is what unites them.
Y es lo mismo que significa el hombre y Dios y el sábado en el medio. El sábado es ese pacto matrimonial del hombre con Dios.
All I'm doing here is I'm just pointing you to look at these connections. And when I leave and I'm halfway across the ocean, you're going to be able to start studying this out yourself. So we can't miss these parallels. So we have to study for ourselves. Our first study group, and they just told us what they were interested in, and that's what we did. So And you got a handful of Daniel and Revelation again, but that is exactly what they were after. They wanted to know what all that stuff meant for us today.